Hello everyone, my name is Melodie and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make my new pattern, the Mara blouse. The Mara blouse is a simple yet classy blouse with a V neckline and ruffled sleeves. You will find the PDF pattern linked in the description box down below. Now let's get started. First, we are going to gather the shoulders at the front, between the notches. To create gathers, set your stitch length to the longest setting. Sew 2 parallel lines of stitching within the seam allowance. Leave long threads at both ends. Gently pull on the threads to gather the fabric evenly, creating regular gathers. Adjust the gathers so they match the length of the back shoulders. Gather the center back between the notches. Match the length with the upper back yoke. Overlock the bottom edge of the front facing. Do not take into account the fact that there is an overlock on the top edge of the facing, nor the fact that my front facing was not cut on the fold. Make a 7mm hem, then stitch 5mm from the edge. Attach the front facing to the front body's neckline. Trace the seam allowance at the center of the V for more accuracy when sewing and pivoting at the V. Clip the center of the neckline, stopping 2mm from the seam line. Overlock the seam. Press the seam allowance towards the facing. Understitch 4mm from the seam line on the facing. Press the front neckline. Now, let's move on to the back yoke. Sew the neckline of the back yoke, right sides together. Then clip the curve. Understitch 4mm away from the seam line on the inside of the back yoke. Press the back neckline. Attach the shoulders by sandwiching the front pieces between the 2 layers of the back yoke. Pin securely and sew. Repeat this operation on the opposite side. Trim the corners. press the shoulder seams. Join the back yoke to the back bodice piece. First, sew the outer side of the back yoke to the back piece, right sides together. Pin the inner side of the back yoke to the back piece, right side of the yoke to the wrong side of the back piece. Reach through the armhole to pin all along the seam, then sew. Turn the garment inside out and press the seam. Now we can move on to the sides. Sew the sides using the French seam technique. Pin the sides with the round sides together and sew at 5 mm, aligning the notches. Press the seam open, then press again, marking the center of the seam with the right sides together. Sew right sides together at 1 cm. Press the seam towards the back. It's time to try on your Mara blouse to see how it fits you. Every body is unique, so you may need to make adjustments at the bust. If this is your case, refer to the adjustments chapter in the instructions. Now let's take care of the sleeves. Create a narrow hem on the sleeves. The hem refers to the curved part of the sleeves. To do this, fold the fabric 5 mm from the edge and sew as close to the edge as possible. Trim the excess seam allowance. Fold the edge a second time and stitch over the first seam. Press carefully. Gather the sleeves cap along the straight edge. Match the length of the sleeves to the distance between the two notches on the armhole. Sew right sides together between the two notches. Trim the seam allowance of the ruffles. We will use bias tape to finish the sleeves. Sew the bias tapes together in pairs, right sides together using a 5mm seam allowance. Attach the bias tape to the armhole, right sides together, aligning it over the sleeves seam. Leave a few centimeters of bias tape at the beginning. Quick tip: to make the seam of the bias tape discreet, start sewing under the armhole. Stop sewing a few centimeters before finishing the seam. Overlap the bias strip at a 90-degree angle . Mark and cut the bias tape to the correct length. Sew the two ends of the bias tape together with a 5mm seam allowance. Finish attaching the bias tape to the armhole. Understitch the bias tape, pressing the seam allowance towards the tape. Trim the garment seam allowance to avoid bulk under the bias tape. Fold the bias tape in half and press to keep the fold in place. Fold the bias tape again and stitch as close to the edge as possible. Press the armholes. And it's already the last step. Hem the garment by making a first fold of 5 mm, then a second fold of 1 cm and stitch. Press the entire garment one final time. Et voilà! Your Mara blouse is now finished! I hope you enjoyed sewing the Mara blouse and learned some new techniques. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. It really helps support my work. See you next time, and bye!